Hi, welcome to lesson 6. We'll log into Easel as always. And we left off lesson 5, and I'll bring that up. If you recall, we had a picture frame. We put a picture within it, but this picture frame is residing inside a big board. Now, how would you cut that out? Well, you could take it over to the table saw and cut it there, and hopefully it'll come out just right. But the easier way to do it is to actually cut it right on the board. But in order to do that, we can't. We have to do it immediately following this carve here. And what we do is maintain the XY position that we started with. We change the bit, put the bit in that we're going to use for cutting, and we can continue the second cut operation on top of this first one. So let's look what happened if we were trying to cut right now. If we tried to cut on the outside here, let's create a shape. And we know that this picture frame is 6 by 6. So let's make this 6 by 6. Then we're going to make it cut outside the shape path, and we're going to cut all the way down. But look what we have here. Since we're trying to use a V-bit to cut all the way through the board, a V-bit starts off very narrow, but at the top it's a 1/4 inch wide. So our cut is a 1/4 inch wide. To accomplish this, the bit would actually have to go all the way through the board and then down through the height of the bit to get all the material off. What you do is make a mess of your wasteboard, and of course you'd be wearing the bit out. So we really don't want to use this bit to create this. So what we want to do is back out of this. We'll get rid of this cut right now using Control Z. We can do that. And now we're back to lesson 5, just where it was. I'm going to take lesson 5 and I'm going to copy it. All right. So we're going to go up to the project and we're going to make a copy of the whole project. And we did that. Now we have something up here called, let me clear this out. We are in something called copy of lesson 5. I'm going to rename that. I'm going to call that lesson 6 to save confusion. All right, now I'm going to create my 6 by 6 outline here. I'm going to do what I did before, which is cut it all the way down. And I'm going to do a cut outside the shape. And we still have the same problem we had before, but now I'm going to change the bit to an 1/8 inch bit. And I use an 1/8 inch bit because that's a pretty common bit. You'll use it for a lot of different things, and it cuts well. They're fairly inexpensive and they're easy to maintain. Going down to a 16th or a 32nd inch bit, you have more risk of breakage, etc. So I prefer to use an 1/8 inch bit when I'm making cuts like this. But now my cut's okay, but what's going to happen if I simulate this, it's going to try and cut the whole thing with the 1/8 inch bit. Now we know that's not going to work. We can already see that. Let me see if I can stop the simulation. No, it doesn't let me do that. All right, we'll have to wait for it to simulate. But you'll notice already that it's not going to cut the whole thing because an 1/8 inch bit doesn't work. But remember, in the lesson 5, if we were to cut that first using the V-bit and then leave this board within the X-carve machine, if we don't change where the X and Y 0 location, so we had set X and Y to 0 at a certain point right over here. If we don't change that, we can change the bit, reset the depth of the cut, which is the Z axis, so we can reset Z after we change the bit, and we're actually in the same exact position we were in when we made the previous cut. So this is how you change bits. Basically, you do a second cut. But to do the second cut here, we don't want to have all this stuff in the middle. So let's go back here and get rid of all this stuff in the middle. I wonder if we can do that without. It's kind of hard to do it with this in the way. So I'm going to take my outline, if I can find it here, and I'm going to move it off to the side. We know it starts at position x equal 1 and y equal 1. So we're going to return it to that position once we're done. So I'm going to move it out of the way. I'm going to take all of this and get rid of it. We're going to delete it. We're going to click on this. Set x and y equal to 1. And now this will cut on the outside of our previously cut project. So lesson 6 will cut outside of what we did in lesson 5. It's that simple. And we restart it. So we do a simulate on this. It's going to be pretty quick. It says 15 minutes. We could probably speed that up a little bit if we wanted, but for now, let's do that. We'll bring this back, and we'll see that it's going to go around. I'll speed it up. And it's going to go around the loop there and keep cutting until it gets down to the bottom. Yeah, and then it's done. So simply changing the bit and cutting again at the same location, we can cut that out. So now we not only have a picture and a picture frame, but the picture frames cut exactly on the outside of our area that we've set up in lesson 5. So this would complete that project. So what else can we do here? Once we've done that, there's some other things that happen with the Pro version versus the standard version. And let's talk a little bit about that. If you remember back, we mentioned this before. If I change this to a V-bit, you'll notice that the carve says, oh, this is a Pro carve. You can't do that. You can't do that with the standard version. Even though it lets you do the simulation, it doesn't do that. So we'll go back to an 1/8 inch bit, and that goes away. And that says you can cut that. Let me get this down to the right size here. Yeah. All right, so that's one thing that the Pro version does at the other one. Other things that happen to the Pro version, let's talk about cut settings. Cut settings, manual cut settings, you would think you could change all these feed rates, etc., but they only work with the Pro version. Yeah? Again, the raster, the x-axis raster works, but the y-axis raster is only with the Pro version. So again, anytime I click on these things, you'll note that up here, the Pro carve lights up. All right. If I do a ramp cut here, again, Pro version. The only one I can do is a straight cut with this version. All right, so let's go back to automatic and some other things that we can do. Let's go to the birch plywood. Get out of this. We'll go over here. All right, we can add materials. Look at this. We have maple plywood that I added before. Let's see, add inventables materials. And these are different materials that you can add. And there's things that you might use. Let's do cherry wood. We're going to add that. And let's go back up to our last screen. Now we have cherry wood as added to our materials list, which means we can change this from birch plywood to cherry wood. Pretty good, huh? All right. So what if we wanted to add an exotic material that's not listing? Let's go and look at that. We're going to add material, but we're going to add materials that are custom this time. So let's call this some exotic lumber. And exotic wood, and we'll give it 10 inches wide, 10 inches deep, and 0.5. And we'll save it. Now, we've added exotic wood, and we can do that. Now, the nice part about this is we have that in our settings. Let me go back. So we could change this to exotic wood, which I don't know what exotic is, but and you'll notice that it's right here, and when I load it up, it resets the size of the wood to 10 by 10 instead of 8 by 12, which is what before. So if you're working with the same size wood all the time, you can set up add a material, and not so much for the difference in species, but you could set up, let's say, a piece of maple plywood that you use a lot at 24 by 24, and that's what you use. And now every time you open it up and add maple plywood, it comes up at 24 by 24. So it's kind of nice to have that. Let's go we're going to get rid of this exotic because that's really not what we want to use. All right. And let's go back and notice that one thing up here. If we're using that maple plywood that I added, it says you can only do that with the Pro version. Now, let's try cherry wood. It says I can carve that even without the Pro version. So it depends on what you select, I guess. Let's look at cherry wood. That worked. And maple. Maple is a Pro carve for some reason. I'm not sure why. And cherry isn't. I'll bet you cherry's down here. Yeah, it's cherry plywood is the standard. Let's see. Yeah, cherry plywood would be okay. And birch plywood. These are all standard things that we see all the time. For some reason, maple plywood is a Pro carve. Interesting. All right, anyway. So let's go back to our standard birch plywood, which is what we usually use. Yeah. All right, so that's one thing we could do. Let's talk about bits. Now, I've added this. I'm going to delete this in a minute. Hang on. I'm going to add a bit. Now, this 32nd inch bit that I added here, I'll delete it for now. Okay, but now if I want to add a bit, some bits I can add, and those bits that I can add are from Inventables. So I can go find that 32nd inch bit somewhere. Oh no, this one, I'll load this one this time. Okay, I'm going to add that bit. And now if I go back to my bit settings, we'll find that I have a 16th and I have a 32nd inch bit here. See it? The width is 1/32. Now if I try to add a custom bit, it won't let me do that, and I'll call it mine. Bit type will be called an upcut, okay? And it allows me to do that, okay? But when I go to use it, let's see what happens. So let's go back to my bits. And this time I have a bit named Bob. And notice I really can't use that because that is now a Pro carve. In other words, you have to have a Pro version to use that. So that's not going to work, is it? So let's go back to add a bit. And we'll remove that bit there, since we really can't use it anyway. All right. But with 32nd and carbide bit, which is a standard inventables bit, if we close out now and go back to a standard 32nd bit, you'll notice that he allows us to use that bit. Now 32nd inch bits are, they break pretty easily, so I don't recommend you use them except for fine finish work. But those are the kind of things that the Pro version allows you to do. Alright, so we've gone over quite a few things today. We've nosed around the Pro version versus the standard version, and we've also created a cut for our previous project, our Lesson 5 project. And we did that using an 1/8 inch bit. Let me set this back to 1/8 inch so I don't forget. There it is there. Alright, so we're going to cut that out with an 1/8 inch bit. Alright, so hopefully we can try some other things. I think in the next session we'll go into something a little more exotic, and it'll be more adding new ideas to what we've learned so far, and perhaps practicing some of the things that we've demonstrated. So stay with us, and we'll bring up lesson 7 pretty quickly.